The College of Cardinals began deliberations on Tuesday to set the date for the funeral of Pope Francis, which was decided for Saturday 26 at 10 a.m. local time. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, accused his counterpart in El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, of being a serious and systematic violator of human rights. And in Palestine, authorities reported that a new Israeli attack on a residential complex killed 19 civilians in the city of Khan Yunis. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The College of Cardinals began deliberations on Tuesday to set the date for the funeral of Pope Francis, which was decided for Saturday 26 at 10 a.m. local time. The body will be transferred on April 23rd to St. Peter's Basilica for the public wake, which will last 3 days. Protocol calls for a state ceremony, followed by a simple burial in the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, as Francis had ordered in his will. The wooden coffin, without traditional 3 coffins, will be buried in the Pauline Chapel under the icon of the Salus Populi Romani, with no inscriptions beyond his name in Latin. The conclave to elect a successor is expected to begin between 15 and 20 days after the death. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, dozens of Christians in the city of Multan, known as the City of Saints, organized a mass with candles and prayers for Pope Francis. The service was led by Bishop Yusuf Sohan, Catholic Bishop of Multan, who spoke of how Pope Francis had worked for brotherhood, peace, and unity. Pakistan has about 3 million Christians in a nation of some 250 million people, and the country's Christian community is planning a special memorial service for the Pope this Sunday.
We are all paying tribute to him as he has done many services. Throughout the war, he had worked for brotherhood, peace, and unity.
Today we have lost the benefactor of humanity. We have lost the Pope Francis, who has gone to the God. Pope Francis was a humble man, and when he assumed his position he adopted the title of Francis, which means humbleness, and he raised a strong voice for peace in Gaza.
The death of Pope Francis has shocked the world and, of course, the Argentine Republic, where the High Pontiff was born. A correspondent brings us some reflections of the people on the streets of Buenos Aires.
The
death of Pope Francis was not in itself a surprise. His long convalescence foresaw this outcome. What did he leave? Among other things, ideas in the youngest hearts.
He always motivated us with all his phrases.
Pope Francis was for me a figure that transcended the spiritual. Although I am a practicing Catholic and work in the Catholic field, the figure of Pope Francis was very special because he was very close, especially to the Argentinian people, and all my youth was accompanied by his pontificate, which I am deeply grateful for.
One of the virtues of Pope Francis, the Latin American Pope, was to bring together non-Catholics, atheists, agnostics, and doubters, who, yes, understood the message, uniting people.
He was a pope who was very much on the side of the most vulnerable. He was very much at the side of the poorest, creating consciences for those of us who perhaps are not so aware.
I am Paraguayan, and I think he vindicated the Paraguayan, Latin American woman. He is very special for us Paraguayans.
I brought a couple of phrases, many that I took from Instagram, and that Pope Francis reminded us that there is room for everyone in the church.
A diverse Pope departed, leaving behind a great diversity of ideas.
Thanks to God, I had the opportunity to meet him in Rome. It is a memory that I will carry forever in my heart. At that moment, he advised me to go ahead, and I think that is what he would also advise us today, and will continue to tell us from heaven, to go ahead with our faith project.
con nuestros proyectos y con nuestro camino de fe. Mostrándonos una realidad que a veces queremos.
He was showing us a reality that sometimes we want to sweep under the rug, and it shouldn't be that way. We have to see it, so he showed that, with his mistakes and successes, like every person. But I think that's one of the greatest legacies. To be attentive and to live as Matthew 25 says, what you did for the least, you did for me.
Desde Buenos Aires para Telesur, Fabián Restivo.
We have now our first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. During his program, Con Maduro Más, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, accused his counterpart in El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, of being a serial and systematic violator of human rights after confessing to the kidnapping of 252 Venezuelan migrants in a maximum security prison. This comes in response to Nayib Bukele's recent proposal to exchange the Venezuelan migrants kidnapped in El Salvador for people condemned for terrorist acts and corruption in Venezuela. In this context, Maduro denounced the systematic violation of human rights against the people of Venezuela and the complicity of the far right in support of these aggressions, demanding guarantees and the immediate release of the Venezuelan nationals. The Venezuelan head of state also denounced Bukele's actions against his own population, highlighting his repressive, persecutory policies and violations of due process, stating that justice will be served for the crimes of his counterpart.
La rueda de prensa que dio el fiscal general de la República hoy en Venezuela.
The press conference given by the Attorney General of the Republic today in Venezuela puts the point where it has to be already in the international public opinion, including in El Salvador, that there's a very strong control of the networks and the media, a lot of money. Someday it will be investigated where so much money comes from the fortune of Mr. Bukele and his family, from the groups that surround him, Leopoldo Lopez, Lester Toledo, all this group of the Venezuelan fascist extreme right wing that has become his right hand. Someday it will be known where so many millions of dollars come from to control all the networks, all the television stations, all the radios in El Salvador. But this way a gap has already been opened, and it is already a fact that this expression of the Attorney General of Venezuela, Tarek William Saab, is beginning to be repeated as an absolute truth. Bukele is a serial violator of the right to freedom, fair treatment, and the dignity of human beings.
Y a la dignidad de los seres humanos.
The Venezuelan president also emphasized that the presence of the 252 Venezuelan migrants in the mega prison of El Salvador without the right to due process constitutes a clear act of kidnapping.
2 meses después de que las familias, sus madres.
2 months after the families, their mothers and children demanded Mr. Bukele to give an evidence of life and to publish the list of the people he has kidnapped there in an illegitimate and brutal way. 2 months later, for the first time, yesterday, Resurrection Sunday, a cynical, diabolical thing in the middle of Resurrection Sunday, when humanity and us, Catholic Christians, are celebrating that Christ defeated death, that life has triumphed, a special day for us Catholics and Christians. He stabs, but he recognizes for the first time, judicially speaking, he recognizes that he has 252 Venezuelans in jails at his disposal without trial, without judges, without the right to due process, without the right to defense.
Al debido proceso, sin derecho a la defensa, y además se niega a publicar.
And he also refuses to publish the faith of life of each one of them, to answer to their mothers and to answer to their lawyers that have been hired. How can this be called justice, democracy, freedom? He is a systematic and serial violator of human rights from the Savior against the Venezuelan people.
Humanos desde El Salvador contra el pueblo venezolano.
And in El Salvador, social movements condemn the proposal of President Nayib Bukele to exchange kidnapped Venezuelan migrants in a maximum security prison in the country. They also described as hypocritical the president's affirmation that in his country there are no political prisoners. From San Salvador, our correspondent Roberto Wopresa with the details.
The organizations that make up the Popular Resistance and Rebellion Bloc raised their voices in condemnation of President Nayib Bukele's proposal to use imprisoned Venezuelan migrants as a bargaining chip.
We have strongly repudiated the cynicism of the Bukele regime, who in a desperate attempt to wash its image before the international community has ended up accepting that it is holding Venezuelan citizens hostage publicly on its X account, an alleged prisoner exchange between Venezuela and El Salvador. This act is nothing more than a propaganda maneuver to hide its own repressive and criminal policy against the Salvadoran people.
No más muerte, no más minería, y por eso nuestros compañeros están capturados.
This social movement affirms that in El Salvador, there is persecution of opponents and political prisoners.
Historical leaders of the Salvadoran left, persecuted for their legacy of revolutionary struggle, as in the case of Eugenio Chicas, members of social organizations such as Fidel Zavala, Atilio Montalvo, Pepe Malara, and other unionists. Environmental activists such as the Defenders of Cabanas imprisoned for opposing mining and neoliberal plundering. Journalists and critical communicators silenced for denouncing human rights violations.
Críticos silenciados por denunciar las violaciones a los derechos humanos.
The social movement regrets that El Salvador is adopting a strategy of interference.
We regret and condemn that these acts of interference continue to be repeated. It is also regrettable the vocabulary used by President Bukele when referring to the government of Nicolas Maduro, of Comrade Nicolas. This is really a smokescreen.
Realmente es una cortina de humo.
The FMLN also took a firm position. The Secretary General of the party considers that this is a maneuver previously planned by the global ultra-right.
Why have only Venezuelans been brought to the Secot prison in El Salvador? Why not Peruvians? Why haven't they deported people from other countries? And this is precisely the question we are asking ourselves at the international level. It is a plot prepared by the fascist right wing of Venezuela, by Marco Rubio, by the US, globalists, against countries that do not bow their heads before the pretensions of Donald Trump.
Officially, the Supreme Court of Justice and the Salvadoran Prosecutor's Office have not responded to the request made public on Sunday by the Venezuelan prosecutor, who asked for details of the migrants imprisoned more than a month ago.
Roberto Hugo Presa, teleSUR, El Salvador.
In our news, this Monday, the Ministry of Health of Colombia announced a health emergency decree as a priority protection measure due to the rise in yellow fever cases. This way, per the document, people from 9 months onwards without age limit must be vaccinated if they live or are going to travel to risk areas. Vaccination will be carried out through the implementation of mobilization and intensification and follow-up strategies, depending on the risk category in which the municipality is located. The decree also entails that authorities must establish health control posts, which will include vaccination services and must require travelers to present their vaccination card. Meanwhile, in the U.S., Harvard University has filed a federal lawsuit against the Trump administration to block the freeze of more than $2.2 billion in federal grants and contracts. The university argues that the administration's actions are unconstitutional and exceed its authority by attempting to control Harvard's academic governance, hiring, admissions, and ideological policies. The funding freeze was justified by allegations that Harvard failed to address anti-Semitism on campus, but the university says there is no connection between these claims and the research funding withheld. Harvard also asserts that the administration did not follow required legal procedures before imposing the freeze. The lawsuit highlights concerns that the funding cut threatens critical medical and scientific research in areas such as pediatric cancer and infectious diseases. We're now going to have our second break. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. A final break, and we're going to be right back with more. Welcome back. In Palestine, authorities reported a new Israeli attack on a residential complex killed 19 civilians in the city of Khan Yunis. The preliminary report detailed that 10 children were among the victims. On the other hand, the authorities specified that bombardments were registered to the northeast of Rafah and against a tent of displaced people in Jabalia. The Zionist army violated the ceasefire agreement by reactivating its criminal attacks on the coastal enclave on March 18th this year. Gaza authorities announced on Tuesday that the number of people killed by Israel has risen to more than 51,000 and at least 117,000 injured since the beginning of the genocide perpetrated by the occupation in Gaza. And in the midst of the brutal escalation of violence in Haiti, the Special Representative of the United Nations warns of the point of no return to which the country is headed. The erratic policies imposed by the United States and Canada, with backing of the Organization of American States, have plunged Haiti into an unstoppable spiral of violence. The UN's quarterly report presented to the Security Council on Monday by its Special Envoy Maria Isabel Salvador affirms that the country could drift into imminent collapse and requests immediate additional support to the United Nations. Furthermore, the report called for immediate additional support to the police to contain the fall of Port-au-Prince, the nation's capital, from the domination of criminal groups. And in Cuba, the government officially inaugurated the 15th Health for All Trade Fair as part of the International Convention Cuba Health 2025. Government authorities officially opened the trade fair at the fairgrounds of the Convention Center in Havana. 117 foreign companies and 112 national companies participate in this exposition. During his speech, the Vice Minister of the Republic, Eduardo Diaz, categorically denounced the criminal unilateral measures imposed by the United States on the Caribbean island, which increased the blockade of the health sector on the island. In Costa Rica, the Poás volcano erupted suddenly, sending a powerful ash plume soaring approximately 2,000 meters above the crater, marking the most intense eruption of the year so far. The eruption blanketed the Central Valley with ash, including Alajuela, Heredia, and San Jose, prompting health and safety warnings across the region. The Volcanological and Seismological Observatory of Costa Rica reported that the eruption lasted about 10 minutes and was accompanied by the release of toxic gases, incandescent materials, and heightened seismic activity, with sulfur dioxide emissions exceeding 600 tons. This eruption follows a period of escalating volcanic activity at Poás, which has been showing frequent phreatomagnetic events and ash emissions since late March, with previous plumes reaching up to 1,000 meters.
At 2:14 in the afternoon, the eruption produced an eruptive column that reached up to 3 or 4 kilometers above the crater level, and the ash is dispersing towards the southwest. There are already several reports of ashfall, and the Observatory continues to monitor the situation.
Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.